Okay. And I need to find my questions again real quick that I want to discuss with you guys.
Bruce, would you like me to read the questions?
Yeah, that would be good. Let's go ahead and let Marcus talk about his life first, just to give a background of where you've been and what you've done and what you're doing and plan to do.
Right.
So go ahead, Marcus.
Right. Just one question. Do I have to hold the microphone here?
It's better because it's
Okay.
if it's not there, it's not very easy to hear you.
Right. So I'm gonna start talking about my education at first. So I decided to study agriculture by the year 2008. Okay. Then in 2009, I joined the University of São Paulo School of Agriculture, which is called ESALC, USP in Portuguese. Okay. I started studying there, I started having internships there. Then I applied for a double degree program with an agricultural school in France named Agro. And then I studied in France for 2.5 years and I got the two diplomas, so both a Brazilian and a French diploma. After that, I came back to Brazil, started working with environmental laws, like I was an assistant engineer responsible to check if projects complied with Brazilian environmental legislation. Then I changed my mind. I decided I wanted to go to academia back again, and I enrolled to a master's in irrigation at Exalc USP as well. So I went back to a city named Piracicaba, which is very close to Campinas. And after that, as soon as I finished my master's, I went for a PhD in New Zealand, where I worked with water and nitrogen in agriculture. Like, I know you guys are not from the field, but nitrogen and water, they're both like a big thing in agriculture, okay? So they are the most common deficits for plants worldwide. So that's why they are studied. One of the reasons why they are studied a lot. Like nitrogen and water are super important on plant growth. Not that other elements or other resources are not, but those two, due to their uh, lack of availability in some cases, okay, they are studied a lot. Yeah. So I finished my PhD last year, and then I came back to Brazil because my father was sick. I started doing some small projects in agriculture here, like I was an assistant engineer in some agricultural experiments, and I started like teaching English, both I like online classes and physical classes, like people are present. And yeah, so that's what I'm doing right now, and I intend to go back to work as an agronomist, but in Europe in a few months.
Good, very good. So I created a list of questions to stimulate our conversation today to give some orientation about ideas that I had, and I did post in the group here in the chat that if you have a question that comes to your mind that you're thinking about while we're talking, please you can put it in the chat, and we will address this later on after we've gone through a lot of our things, unless it's something that's pertinent and relevant to something we're currently talking about, we can, look at that too. So let me have you ask our first question there, Leo.
Okay, Marcus, what are your plans for the future?
So my plan for the future is to go back to. I do no longer want to work in academia. Sorry, I do no longer want to work in academia anymore. So with research and teaching, though I like teaching a lot, but I want to go for the private sector now. So working with irrigation as a consultant in either like the Netherlands, Belgium, or maybe Luxembourg, or work maybe in like banking but related to agriculture. That's what I intend to do in the near future. Yeah.
I didn't understand the one word. Was it planting or painting?
Banking, banking,
Banking?
working. Yes, yes, working in a bank.
Working in a bank.
Yes, but related like studying the viability of agricultural projects.
Ah, so you're like working within the bank, but in agriculture.
Yes,
You know
yes,
the
that's
company
it.
called Rabobank?
Yes, yes, Rabobank. Yeah.
Yeah, it's here in Sao Paulo. I was teaching a student there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I only learned about it because I had class with her. It's
Yeah.
interesting that they do a lot of investments in Brazil.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Okay.
So that's why I wanna see myself, cause it's after you finish a PhD, it is not that easy to find a job. Like you are overqualified for most of the things. And even like if you are apply for jobs that don't require that much like level of specialization, like it's hard to get it. It's hard to get it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. And the second question.
Marcus, what do you think about Brazil's agriculture and in terms of agro practices? How does
Mhm.
Brazil compare to other countries you are familiar with?
Right. So I have lived in Brazil, France, and New Zealand, right? I had my PhD in New Zealand. And at first, what I must say about Brazilian agriculture is that as Brazil is like a country of continental proportions, okay, continental dimensions, agriculture inside Brazil is very like variable. It varies a lot from one side of the country to the other, okay? Not just like parameters such as rainfall, soil type, um, sorry, elements availability, like it's not the same. So the models they are different, like how land is owned, how properties are organized, they change a lot as well. And the objective, like what people aim having like a farm, that varies a lot as well. Some people aim like internal market more in some regions,
Your
and in
voice
other
is a
regions
little
they
bit low.
okay,
Good, good.
maybe not.
Better.
And in other regions, they tend to export more and they don't aim selling products internally. That's what changes a lot, right?
Mm.
So it is extremely variable here in Brazil, okay? But some problems are the same all over Brazil, okay? And some problems are specific for some regions of Brazil, right?
Mhm.
Not all regions have the same problems, and that's due to like natural reasons or for economic reasons, okay? That varies a lot. But what do we have as a major problem in Brazil, like related to agriculture? That is a problem nationwide.
Mm.
So logistics is a problem nationwide, okay?
Yes.
So uh, it is a bottleneck, okay? The transport could be cheaper, but most of the transport is still done by trucks, okay? So that makes things like more expensive than what they could be if we were using trains, okay? Like to both like make to both import fertilizers and export like the commodities, or even like to transport like the merchandise inside the country. So that's a problem uh, happening like in a national level. Okay. Then I'm going to mention some problems that happen in a local level. For example, in southern Brazil during autumn, okay, uh, we have a period that we call the autumn empty, or like autumn emptiness. And there is a period in autumn in which we lack like uh, a crop to grow. We don't know like what we should be growing. Okay, to feed cattle. Actually, like there are some experiments we know, but people prefer to grow other crops than forage. So there is a lack of forage during this period. Okay. So it's a thing being very studied here in Brazil right now. I recently had a scientific paper accepted into a journal writing about it, where I wrote the viability of a specific plant named buckwheat to be used as animal fodder during this period, okay? Uh, but um, yeah, so Brazil has another problem as well when it comes to technology, right? So there is very good and nice technology being created here in Brazil, but the adoption of that technology in the farms is not very, it's not simple to be done. Okay, we have, for example, there are people that cannot like afford everything, okay, or don't want to afford everything because they are suspicious when it comes like to new technology. Here in southern Brazil, what I hear when I visit some farmers, when I visit some properties, is that okay, so my grandfather has been like sowing this crop uh, the same way for 50 years. My father has been doing that for 30 years. I have been doing that for 10 years. And now you tell me that I need to change. Why, if I'm getting good results? Then I have to explain, because if you do this way, you will get better results. If you adopt this technology, then you will get even better results, right?
Mhm.
Things like
I have
that.
a question. In the United States, some farmers, many farmers actually, are told not to plant, and the government pays the people money to not
Mhm.
plant, and it's to keep the balance of the produce, the production of commodities or whatever, so that it's a good price for the farmer, for the
Mhm.
farmers who make or actually produce or plant and sow the crops, and then they reap and they harvest the crops. They have to get a good price. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense to be in business as a farmer. So the government pays a subsidy to some farmers to not plant this year. And that's okay to give the land time to recuperate. But it's also interesting to keep the balance of the money, of the value of the crops.
Mhm.
Does
Mhm.
that happen in Brazil too, that you know of?
I'm actually not sure that if the government like pays people not to sow anything. Rodrigo, do you know anything about it?
Here in Brazil, we have the different system called CONAB. All the to make this control of the price, because if the price is so low and the crop don't make profit, government buy the excess of production and and uh, sorry the word, and put in stock, and this kind of uh, process to regulate the price. But and I don't know if it's a, a system nowadays, if the government really is making this process.
Okay.
I, yeah.
Curious, just a curious question I had, because I know that that happens in the United States and it's kind of strange, but I
Mhm.
understand it. You know, when you talk about economics of farming, you know, if you have many people planting corn and the corn has a, we call a bumper crop, it's like, wow, so much. And then the value of the corn goes down.
Goes down. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's that's why they do that.
One thing that I would like to comment now that you have said about the United States, I don't know. I actually think I shall leave it for later to compare Brazilian and American agriculture. Okay, I think that it's a question for later.
All right. And then Leo, next question, please.
Yes. What are some positive developments in Brazil's agro industry?
Right, right. So Brazil has a very competitive agriculture when compared to other countries, okay? So Brazilian farming, though we have lots of technical difficulties still, okay, we have been improving a lot and it's very, very competitive. So the technology being generated and the technology that is adopted, okay, makes things even better. So not only on the aspect like on having higher yields, but also on like being more environmental friendly, okay? So nowadays there are studies going like studies being done worldwide, not only in Brazil, on carbon stocks, okay, related to agriculture, okay? So the carbon balance, the input and the output that happens when you grow like a crop for a season, or like if you have a perennial crop covering your soil, okay? So Brazil has been developing a lot, like state-of-the-art technology when it comes to agriculture, okay? But as I previously said, not not all farmers, like not all regions can adopt the technology immediately. Sometimes it takes a lot of time for it to be adopted.
And probably
Okay.
some adaptation, other modifications to that technology too, based on
And
the situation of the land and the temperature, everything, you know. So
And when I say technology, I don't want you guys to think only of like, like electronic things, computers in agriculture, satellites taking image. That is all part of technology, yes, but there are other kinds of technology. For example, selective breeding that has been producing new varieties of plants like for many, many, many years. Okay. Actually, humans have been doing that for more than 10,000 years. The thing is that they just didn't know that they were doing selective breeding. We just like called it selective breeding like nowadays in the 20th century. It's a recent thing, it's a recent name. Okay. But they were doing that. And so transgenics, for example, and genetically modified organisms, okay, GMOs in English, they are a technology that are being used here. There are some people that criticize, and it's fair enough. You can criticize the new technology being adopted,
what is
okay?
your opinion?
My personal opinion is that I am pro GMOs, but under certain conditions, okay? The thing is that they should be properly used. If they are not used properly, they're going to bring some problems. And in many farms, those problems are happening, okay, because people are not using the GMOs as they should be used, okay.
What do you think it's important for the end user, the consumer, to know that it's a GMO product?
Yeah, yeah. There should be like that T logo, that yellow triangle with the T in it displayed. Okay, I think it's fair enough that the consumer has information on what he's or she, what the consumer is buying.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Marcus, what measures should Brazil implement to improve and promote sustainable agriculture?
Right. So keep generating good information and technology on that. Okay. After that, making that technology accessible for farmers. Okay. And another thing is that um, I think that trying to change things that agriculture uses, but like other parts, for example, transport systems use, like trying to use more solar energy inside farms and or have for, but that's like a super new thing, it's not coming quickly. For example, hydrogen fueled tractors actually, okay. So those technology, or like more efficient irrigation systems that will like allow less water to be leaked or lost, because that always happens in irrigation, you always lose some water, okay. So those things are better, as well as developing like new cropping systems technology. And what do I mean by cropping system is that when you sow two or more plants or crops at the same time, or when you have a succession of crops that is interesting, like environmentally, okay? So there are many studies in which like scientists report that if you sow like two or three plants on the same like area, but this way, like if you do like interroad, okay, cropping, those plants can like attract predators like ravagers predators, okay, so insects that will eat the ravagers, and then you will have less problems with ravagers, that will you will have to apply less pesticides, okay, or like plants that cover the soil very quickly, then it will not allow weed to develop, okay, then you will have to use less herbicides, things like that, okay. So in order to become environmental friendly, we just have to adopt that technology. But
Okay.
again, as I said, it's not easy, and to generate and like to generate this information to create the technology, it is a very expensive and slow process.
Okay. How important are the companies Monsanto, Cargill, and others in Brazil farming?
So here in Brazil, those companies, Monsanto, Cargill, as well as, for example, Stoller, or companies owned by them, for example, uh, the Calbi. Actually, nowadays, Monsanto belongs to Bayer, if I'm not mistaken. Monsanto was bought by a bigger company, so Monsanto is part of that company right now. I'm not sure if it's Bayer. I may be saying nonsense here, but actually, those companies, they are giants inside the Brazilian market. Okay, so they are very important because they have like a big share of the Brazilian market when it comes like to seed, okay, and like pesticides, okay, and some of them, but not all of them, deal with fertilizers as well, okay. We have other like very big companies that deal with fertilizers, for example, Yara, which is a Norwegian company, and it's very important here in Brazil. But those companies, they're very important because they also like generate technology here. It is true that they are very big and they created a lot of jobs here, okay, and they have many sites where they produce seeds, they provide farmers with seeds, and they also purchase the grain the farmers produced, so they will process the grain and export like what has been yielded.
Okay. Very good. And Leo, what's the next question?
With increasing global demands for food commodities, how can Brazil enhance its agricultural output for exports while ensuring the nation's own food security?
This is a very interesting point now, because though Brazil produces a lot of food, Brazil like is not 100% food safe. There are people starving here in Brazil. Okay, there is a starvation here. So Brazil has lots of farming, but those like grain produced, they don't ever like they don't always go to feed, they don't always feed people. Sometimes they feed animals in another country, okay, they serve as animal fodder, like, but in another country, not in Brazil, okay. So Brazil has a very big like amount of land being used for agriculture. Actually, most of the Brazilian land, uh, when it comes like to agriculture and cattle raising, is not used for agriculture. It is used for cattle raising, okay? But they are pastures which we call degraded pastures. So they are pastures which we say they were not taken good care of, right? So this is a one thing that Brazil can do, is that improve the land that is already being used, and we do no longer have to deforest anymore. We can preserve like the environment. We just have like to improve the quality of the land being used right now. Okay, I'll just give you another interesting information. when it comes like to the soils in Brazil, nationwide, okay, most of the problems we have are of fertility or like chemical nature, okay? Brazilian soils in a physical aspect, they are very good. Most of them, okay? Of course, like not everything, not all of them, but most of them, okay? So we can just correct them, their fertility and like their drainage, for example, which is a physical attribute, is generally like good, right? So improving agricultural quality and the techniques that we do like on the field. For example, a technique that has been adopted in Brazil about 30 years ago, it got like generalized. It is called the direct sowing, right? Direct sowing is when you do no longer use, for example, you don't use, Bruce, correct my pronunciation, please, a plow. You don't
Yep, no
use a
problem.
you don't have to use a plow, okay? You do that. You avoid getting into the field with machinery. You just enter with your machinery on the field to sow and to harvest. You don't do like other operations, right? So that improves soil health a lot, okay?
Wow.
And and that prevents like things from CO2 being released to the atmosphere either by the fuel consumption or like when the machine turns the soil, lots of CO2 is emitted, but really lots of CO2 is emitted to the atmosphere. Okay, so those are environmental friendly techniques that can just like be improved and adopted here in Brazil.
Okay. Very good. And Leo, the next question, please.
About the impacts of climate change, how is Brazil's agro sector coping with them?
At first, I would like to say that the impacts are going to be different for every Brazilian region, okay? So some regions might become drier and some regions might become wetter. Okay, so southern Brazil will become wetter. So an excessive amount of water is a problem in agriculture as well. Okay, and uh, so it's gonna affect like the rainfall. Okay, the rainfall patterns in different parts of the country, and it's going to affect like temperatures as well. So in general, Brazil will get warmer with the climate change. Some parts of the world will become cooler, but of course, like in general, the whole world will become like 1 or 2 degrees warmer in 50, I don't know how many years, some things like that. But it's important like to prevent and to be prepared, because what is going to happen is that crop, the region, the ideal region where to grow a crop, it is going to be displaced, okay? So for it's going to, those regions are going to migrate towards the poles, right? Because the temperature and going still to be like always, they're going to be like cooler towards the poles. So all the like producing regions, they're going to change. So it's important for us to develop strategies, but like since now, and to understand what will happen in Brazil, and that is like there are studies already being done to understand what will happen. But still, I think that there is a lack of projects on like, okay, we know what is going to happen, so now we have to prepare ourselves for the future. Okay, yeah.
And then the next question, the last question we have put together.
What policies should the Brazilian government implement to support agro sector growth?
Well, I think that one thing many people don't like to talk about and they don't like it is like land reforms, okay? So providing land access to people is something that is very important, okay? So they can, that also has a very big social impact because it allows people to have like jobs. They will, produce either foods, fiber, or fuel, okay? Because not only food is generated on agriculture, it is important like to emphasize the production of fibers and fuel as well, okay? And yeah, basically like those things when it comes like to how agriculture is organized, okay? So making mechanisms that will allow people to have an easier land access, okay? And also I would say that I already mentioned the logistics problems we have, okay? So investing on that to solve it, that's gonna make Brazilian agriculture even more efficient, okay? So more competitive when it comes when compared to agriculture from other countries, okay? And yeah, I think those, and maybe like it is already done, but maybe it could be like studied to be done even more. Uh, when you compare, for example, financially speaking, the interest rates that farmers pay for the projects, they are lower than like other loans here in Brazil, but they are still higher. The interest rates are still higher when compared to other countries, okay? So farmers in other countries can get like funds, financial funds for their development, for acquiring new machinery, of improving their farms on some way, acquiring, purchasing a huge irrigation systems. So for them, it's easier. But Brazilian agriculture is still very competitive because technically, like in a technical way, some parts of the country are very efficient, and our costs are in reais, not in dollars or euros. Okay. And there is something that is very interesting for you guys to notice is that I'm going to ask you, Bruce, a question. Bruce, how many harvests happen in the United States per year?
Well, I'm not an agricultural person, but I know one for sure.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
sometimes there's a second, possibly a third. It depends on the crop. It
Yeah,
depends
and it
on,
depends on the region of the United States where
and
you are
also
in
on the
as well.
region. Yes, but I would say generally the two is the norm, if possible. But one is normal, and then
Yeah.
two possibly, but three I don't
Yes.
think so.
In Europe, it's common to have like one or maximum two, right?
Yep.
But here in Brazil, like we have three
I
or
know.
maybe generally four harvests per year. Okay. That does not mean, nonetheless, that the yields are going to be as high as if we were having only one harvest, okay?
Mhm.
Because like what you guys must remember is that summertime in higher altitudes has a very long day length, right? So plants will stay photosynthesizing a longer time on the field, and that will allow them to have like a very
Oh,
high
your voice.
uh, will allow them to have a very high yield. Okay.
Okay.
And but it's an interesting thing for Brazil to have like 3 or 4 harvests per year because that can like supply markets when they cannot have like their own crops being grown,
Right.
right?
Yep. I
And
know that in Ukraine they are a big producer of wheat, and
yes,
so this situation with Russia and Ukraine, it's a big mess. It's affecting the markets a lot. Okay,
yes.
and so everybody's looking, hey Brazil, come on, you can do it. It's like, man, you
Yeah,
know,
yes. So actually, one comment about like the situation in Ukraine. Unfortunately, we are having that conflict there, and it's affecting like wheat prices and other grain prices worldwide. Okay, but at the same time, like people in southern Brazil, some of them might become more. They became more interested in sowing wheat here because of the wheat prices, right? As they grow like higher. So people are, instead of doing other crops during winter, Okay, here in the south, it is common for people to sow wheat, but they are sowing like more of their land proportionally. Okay, if they have a farm, they are sowing more acres or hectares of land on wheat of wheat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so if Brazil like keeps creating trading partners, that's a very interesting strategy as well to allow like Brazilian agricultural production just to flow to other countries. Like we must have like we must keep the markets open. Okay, so I've heard that recently, like this year, that Brazil was the country that created the most um, trading agreements worldwide. So that's an interesting thing to be done. Keep like the channels open.
Yes, for sure. For sure. Okay.
Marcus,
So,
I
yeah.
have some more questions because what are the main crops cultivated in Brazil?
Right. So the main crops here in Brazil, let me just check one thing here. Yeah, I took a note of that just for you guys to to know. So Brazil is a major producer of soybean. It's like number one in the world. Okay. Then there is cotton, maize, milk,
What is
bovine
maize?
meat. Maize is corn. Okay, the same thing, right?
Oh.
uh, Maize. Well, in New Zealand they called it maize, right?
Mhm.
And then bovine meat, poultry, sugar, coffee, and cocoa. But they are just to mention a few.
Yeah,
Okay,
just a few because there are more.
there might be even more. Yeah,
Orange juice.
orange juice as well. Yeah,
Hey,
orange.
I know
Yeah,
that because I remember getting orange juice from Brazil in the United States.
yeah.
And
Even though
coffee.
Florida produces a lot of orange juice, right?
Hmm.
Which
Yeah,
one we are number one?
soybean.
Soy, soybean in? Is that a
Uh,
good one?
I guess like number one. Oh, and sugarcane. Sugarcane, yeah.
Sugarcane.
Oh, also like coffee as well. Sugarcane and coffee. Brazil is number one on those three.
Hmm.
Okay.
But then like on others, for example, bovine meat, I guess we're the second one. Yeah, poultry, Brazil, it's a very big, like just behind the United States, if I'm not sure. Yeah. Brazil is a very big like exporter of meat, both bovine and like uh uh, chicken meat as well. It's very interesting here in the region where I come from because there are many small farms and they all have like poultry. They're all related to poultry, and then like their slaughterhouses, they're always like aiming the east to Mecca because the meat goes to Muslim countries.
Fernando posted a comment in question. Can you see that, Leo,
Let me see.
in the chat?
Okay. Uh, who?
Well, I posted it. I reposted it. Fernando created it.
I can see.
It says, "Are we among the top 5 countries in the world
Mm.
in terms of scientific development? Moreover, apart from agricultural products themselves, are we capable of exporting agricultural technology to other countries?" What is your thought about that, Marcus?
When it comes to technology scientific development in agriculture, I would say that Brazil is in a very, very good position. Okay. The quality of the technology being generated here is very, very good. Okay. There are agencies that do very interesting and like research that is linked to problems that are regional, okay, and some problems like nationwide, and some problems that are global wide. But yes, Brazil can export agricultural technology to other countries as well. Okay, it has already happened, okay, and it keeps happening, okay, and it's not like export, I mean by selling. It is export as a trade of information, okay, that happens as well. I can mention one example. It again, it's not like a technology that it is a product created. It is just like an innovation that happened in a cropping system, right? So some Brazilian researchers found out that
Put your microphone closer, please. Yep.
yes, some Brazilian researchers found out that having some specific plants in the mid rows of the orange trees that will help them like having predators, ravagers, predators, and that will prevent them from having their trees damaged. There's from like insects that would eat the leaves. And also there's another problem with the insects. They don't just eat like the plant, they transmit diseases sometimes, okay? So they just like it came to their knowledge that having some specific plants would help them to manage better their orange orchards,
That's
right?
cool.
Yeah, just that's just one example. But there are many others for sure, okay? There are some agricultural technology valleys here in Brazil, and one of them, for example, is in Piracicaba right now. So they have contact like with researchers worldwide, and sometimes that it does not always happen that the technology is created in Brazil, but sometimes the technology is created elsewhere and improved here in Brazil, right? Or vice versa.
Okay. And I have another question here. Do you see Chat GPT affecting agricultural jobs?
I see like not only Chat GPT, but similar AI affecting everything. It's going to affect. We have to be prepared for that. Okay, we have to be prepared. Chat GPT is just one of them. Just one of them. Okay, but yeah, yeah. It's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that it's going to be a bad thing, okay? AI can do like lots of nice things, okay? I used some AI during my PhD, okay? And I have friends working with artificial intelligence in agriculture, and they're having pretty good results that help the management, like a farm management, okay? So mostly like technology, artificial intelligence related to image recognition, okay? That is affecting many things, and that will make like our jobs easier, right?
Good. There's a question here from Fernando. Can you see it in the chat?
Yes, yes. I'm gonna, oh, well, everybody can, I'm just gonna like read the question because we're gonna
Yeah.
have like it spoken verbally, okay?
Yep.
So people who are watching later can listen to it. How much space technologies, mainly satellite imagery and drones, are incorporated to our agriculture already? Is it wide used? It is widely used, but not everybody can afford it, okay? So we have like satellites that take image, and previous to that, what we had were like airplanes taking aerial pictures of the farm, okay? But then nowadays we have the satellites, and now even better, like we are having drones, okay? The satellite, unless it's a stationary satellite, it won't stay like over your farm taking many pictures of it, pictures that can be analyzed, okay, and give you any specific information. If you have like a drone, uh, it is like it is a good thing because the drone can go anywhere in your farm anytime you want, okay? So those like technologies are very they're becoming cheaper as time goes by, and they can give you like very interesting information. For example, when it comes to precision agriculture, where should I apply more nitrogen fertilizer? Okay, so the images can relate like crop yield to nitrogen, to availability in the soil, and then the next harvest you will have a map where your fertilizing machine shall apply more and other regions where it should apply less. That will save you fertilizer and you won't have to spend that much fertilizer on your property, right? Another question, how does Brazil manage water resources for agricultural purposes? Right, so there is a federal agency that regulates water use called ANA, Agência Nacional das Águas in Portuguese, okay? And then we have like stated related agencies that that have also like there's regional regulations on water use. So when it comes like to on how managing water resource for agricultural purposes, water is managed not only to agriculture, okay? Water is managed for like human use. So according like to rivers flow and other hydrological parameters, they will allow a certain use of like that water, but not only by farmers, okay? Everybody using that water will have like to be prepared for what the environmental agencies, what they say, right? Um, and so depending on the situation, okay, depending on how dry it is, the agencies, and depending on the river flow, which is a very important parameter, depending on river flows, they will allow more or less water to be used, okay? The Brazilian water management system is very similar to the French water management system, right? Which is like semi-regional, federal, something like that. In the United States, the water is managed like on the property. The farmer just does whatever he or she wants with the water. And in Germany, for example, it's all like federal. Everything goes to a federal level, right? It's centralized. But related to that, the next question, what is the most efficient irrigation system you have ever seen? So when it comes to irrigation, the most efficient irrigation system is a drip irrigation system, okay? Dripping is like, it saves you a lot more water. It wastes way less water than the other systems, okay? Other systems they will waste more water. For example, sprinklers, or like sprinkling by center pivot, for example, or like the inundation, like the flooding system, okay, in which they use generally for rice in southern Brazil, that will allow more water to be wasted. Okay, so the most efficient like irrigation system is a drip system. And for example, in Israel, they have a very high efficiency. Actually, one the biggest drip irrigation system company in the world, the manufacturer is Israeli. Okay, is an Israeli company, right?
Oh, sorry. I try to know about the automatically control, the technology used in this control system. What is the way to decide the irrigation? How and how much the period the
Yeah.
system used? Both we here in Rapa we have a system that decide the irrigation by demand. The other system that I know just use time, the decision by time. I would like to know about other systems that, if you know, that
Yes.
decide by demand.
Yeah. So there are systems that they base their decisions on on the soil moisture, okay? That is like the most efficient way, okay? There are some systems that base their decisions on, for example, the grape moisture when it comes like to wine production, okay? But the most efficient ones comes like when it will trigger the system, it will turn the system on when the water's moisture is very low, right? There's another thing as well. Soil moisture is not the only parameter. Depending on like the air temperature and the wind speed, it will not be worth it to irrigate it. So they just put like all those factors together, and then like an algorithm can decide when to irrigate. But the most important factor will be like the soil moisture and when to trigger the system, like which day it will trigger when the soil moisture is below like this percentage. Then what else? Oh, the time of the day it will trigger when the temperature is very low and the wind speed is very low as well. Things like that. Yeah. But I like to work with irrigation systems that base like there is the decision when to irrigate based on soil moisture and how much to irrigate to replenish the soil moisture to like this level. Okay.
Sorry, but the moisture is measured by what is the system? Is it like electronic
Yes, there are some
system?
when it comes like to a farm, they will generally use the cheapest one, which are called tensiometers. Okay, they will base this very cheap, not like super precise, but good enough. Okay, but the best soil moisture mechanism is it's not allowed to everybody to use, which is a neutron probe. Okay, so because it is radioactive, like you have to have like a special license to operate it. But a tensiometer is enough. It is enough.
Okay, I invite you to know our system. Looking for Hidrosense is a company, a Brazilian company that make the system in a partner with Embrapa, and the system is work like a tensiometer, but in the contrary way, the tensiometer measure the moisture of soil by loose of water and making vacuum.
Vacuum.
And our system work with by air. We inject air in the system, and our capsule, no, I don't know the correct word, in the soil, measure the resistance of the air to in the grow in the soil. If we have more water, the air
Doesn't
found
flow. Resistance.
yeah. It's a very good system because we can regulate the point of the motor that we know in the system. I invite you to know is a company in São Paulo. The name is Hidrosense.
I'm gonna look for it. Yeah. Nice.
Okay.
Right. So what are my thoughts on using desalinated water for irrigation? Thing is, the amount of water required for irrigation is immense. It is just like too much, okay? It can be used, but it would require just like a huge desalination plant close to the site being irrigated. So it is true, it can be used, but we must have like a huge desalination plant close to the farms where irrigation water is going to be used. But I am pretty sure that it already happens in Israel, okay?
Yeah.
Bruce, you're on mute.
Yes, it happens in Saudi Arabia too. I remember when I lived there.
Yeah. So So just one thing, guys. Many people say, "Oh, like agriculture and irrigation consume a lot of water, like to produce 1 kilo of grain." But it's natural, like it's natural for the system. Okay, it just naturally happens like that. The water requirement to produce 1 kilo of grain are just like super high. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, on general, it is like 3,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilo of grain. Okay, it
Wow.
is like as absurd as like that. Okay. Okay, so why, despite being a major agricultural country, do we not have job opportunities for highly qualified individuals on the field? Because though we produce technology, we could be producing more, and there are no investments. There are not enough investments. So researchers in Brazil always have to struggle to write projects for grants. Okay, it's always like a very like complicated situation where you have to write grants, generate results, do extension at the same time. So it is like a complicated situation when it comes to available funds for research. And another thing is we have a lot of people in agriculture right now. In We have lots of bachelors in agriculture. Okay, a huge amount of them, and that makes our availability so high that our cost will go very low. Okay, so many people are being employed for a wage of 1,500 reais, 2,000 reais a month. Okay, things like that. People that just came out of academia, so it's no longer like a reason for people to like to invest their time again, to invest like their education again, in becoming like more qualified if they know that they won't find like a position. It's more likely like a market thing, an economic issue than anything else. Okay, because the capacity for generating good results Brazil has.
Mhm. Okay, guys, listen. We need to wrap it up here, and I just wanted to say thank you very much, Marcus, for doing this webinar, and very informative. I love science. Okay, so this is a good part of things I like to talk about: agriculture, food. I like economics too because I like money. So it's all important. It all correlates with one another. And so thank you so much for sharing with your expertise. And Rodrigo, you too. Thank you for your participation. And look forward to the next webinar that we're going to have. I think it'll be in July. I remember something in July. But these webinars are for everybody to participate and to get knowledge about some area of our lives that relates to our lives here in Brazil, and something about that people can bring their experiences in education from other places like New Zealand tonight with Marcus. So thank you so much for participating. Thank you, Marcus, for bringing your profession to us. And thank you all for participating today and asking your questions. So look forward to seeing you guys again in the next one. So take care, you guys.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.